This is a cold winter's day, 13th of February, and we've not had snow like this for a long time. But the sun is shining, the skies are blue, and despite the cold, it's I think just 0 or -1, but I don't waste any time. Because it's a lovely day, I'm going to go out and work on some of the pines that we grow in the field. Because we have such a lot of plants, we can't get around to doing all of them in the space of time that we have in the year. So every time we have decent weather, we go out into the field to do some works. So here I am, and I will show you what I do with these pines. As with all the tasks, I always feel guilty when I do some of the jobs and don't record it. I say to myself, oh, I should have recorded what I was doing. So here we are. Now let's start with these. These are all Scots pines. These are the ordinary Scots pines, not the Bouvernensis. And I will show you exactly what I'm doing. So I will get my colleagues to film it while I work. Now most of these pines, if you don't prune them, they get longer and longer and longer. So take for instance this shoot here. There is about maybe 6 inches, that long branch, and 2 side branches. They were all produced last year, and they grew from these candles, as you can see. So if you don't prune these candles, or don't prune these branches, they get longer and longer. So in about 3 years, you'll get a branch a meter long. You can see where we keep pruning every year. But despite that, you still keep getting longer and longer shoots. So what I do, I can either just prune the ends off, like so, or even prune it back to a bud. As I've told you before, you need to give some green. If I were to prune it here, that branch would die. If I prune it here, that branch would die. So you need to keep some green to make it continue living. So this is what I'm going to do. Now this is too long, so I can cut that off and keep that bit. Also this is too long, I'll cut this bit. So this is going to keep the tree dense. Can you imagine a tree like this? What a lot of shoots there are. So you've got to keep doing it to keep on top of the tree. So this one, for instance, I'll just go around and prune all the shoots and it will bud further back. Where I see buds coming, like this one for instance, you see there's a bud there, so I can safely prune here. And then that will bud further back. Now there are no buds here, so I got to keep this short. Okay, I don't want that. So that's how I prune. Now this one, that's too long. If I prune here, that will continue to grow, so that will keep it dense. So this is how I go about doing the pine. This is just to keep it getting dense. These trees, although they are tall, as I've always said, we have customers who can handle these big trees. They either grow them as garden trees or they use it for large bonsai, whatever they wish. So that's how I go about it. So this is another one. They were all field-grown trees. They were planted in my field in 1986 when I came. The ones which I left in the ground are now 80 feet tall, but the ones I rescued and put in pots, they continue to stay small. So a tree like this, I want these low, flexible branches. I don't want too many of these tall ones. So let's look at this branch, for instance. Do I need it all that long? I don't. So I prune it back to about there and hope it'll bud back. And then I also take the tips out. Now let's look at this branch. Now this branch is quite long. I don't want it that long, so I cut it back to there. And all the tips I can also cut back. There's a little bit of artistic foresight needed here. I don't just cut willy-nilly. I have to see what the potential shape of the tree is. But the general principle about pruning still remains the same. That means you've got to leave some green to get it to bud further back. Like this one, for instance, is getting too long. I can cut it either here, or I can cut it here. You can cut the tips and it'll bud back. If I don't want to get it too long, I can cut it there and it will bud back there. Same with this one, this has become too long. I can cut it here and it will bud back. That's too long. I've got buds there, I can cut it there. So that's the general principle. This is very, very long, you see, so I can cut it there. So that's how I go about looking at all these trees. Now this one, it's got quite an interesting shape there. I don't want it that tall. Probably I'll cut it there. These branches are quite nice. Unfortunately, pines don't air layer. If they could air layer, we could get so many interesting shapes. But nevertheless, these will become nice tall garden trees. So they have their uses. The Scots pine tend to be more floppy and loose, whereas the Bouverensis pines are more dense. So, don't want that tall. So just by doing this, I can make this tree compact again. I have so many trees that, as I said, I have a job keeping on top of them. But while they're growing, they're okay. I can always bring them back and get them to do what I want. It is what we call programming the tree. So this will become, I haven't finished this one. So all these long branches, let's look at this one again. I probably don't want that one. The ordinary secateurs is the best tool to use. See, now that one is far too tall. I'm in danger of losing control completely. So I will do that. If I was so inclined, I could even cut it there and not let it grow that tall. Even a tree like this always has a front and a back. So I'm looking now critically at this tree. If I use this as the front, because that's got a nice bend there, so this got a nice shape this way. I will now use the saw . Let's have a look at this tree. So this tree, this has got a nice trunk line there. Now this is in the way, so I'm going to take this off. Now this is spoiling that line, so I take this off. That's okay, I can develop that. Now this also is a bit confusing. No, I think I can take this off. Let me take the tree from the back out of the way so that it's not confusing you. They've all grown into the ground. I'll keep it there for now. And this one, I show you another little trick. I don't want this to go too tall, so I'm going to take the leader out, and while it's growing there, it'll thicken. No, this is an older tree. Sorry, I thought it was a silver birch. No, it's an older. The ground is frozen solid, by the way. So I'm trying to see the potential shape of these trees. Give it some shape. Make beautiful Niwaki or garden trees. People don't realize the potential of the Scots pine. Many of them are allowed to grow too coarse, and as a result they don't have much shape, but if you keep them pruned and close and tight, they do produce beautiful shapes, like the ones in my pond in the mound. Those 4 trees there, they were produced from material like this only about 20 years ago. Now this one here is growing up. I want the pads to be flat. So if you look at this branch here, I've got these 2 shoots, so I don't want it springing up, so I can take this out. And then these, because they're so long, just take the tips out and it will bud back. I don't want to rush it, but that's again the general principle. All the tips you take out and it will bud back. So there are lots of tips here growing. There are too many shoots there. I don't need them all. It can become a bit confusing. This is a large Bouvernensis pine, and the history of these trees is that I bought about 50 of them originally from a conifer grower in the UK, but he's now ceased to operate. I think he has sold his property, and that nursery is now building, housing estate. So these trees, when I bought them in 1985, 86, were already about 60 centimeter tall, and they would have been then 15, 20 years old. So this tree would be about 55, 60 years old. And Bouvernensis pines are unique in that they always produce these multi-trunk arrangements. Look at it, 4 beautiful trunks there. So not many pines, especially Scots pines, they're very shy to produce multiple trunks. In fact, there are 5 trunks and more. So this is going to be used as a multi-trunk tree, either as a large garden bonsai in our Islington project, which you've seen videos of. People give the right arm for trees like this. So this has been pruned over the years. You can see the cuts where I made. I cut that, cut that, cut that. So, and the leader was cut out, so the side branches were grown. So it's a very, very long process. In case you think it is, a 7-day wonder, it's not. If we come round to this side, because this side is also interesting, if you take a bird's eye view, it's a nice dense plant from this side, but because there's a lot of branches at the back, it wouldn't look very nice as the front of the tree. I could change it and make the front should I decide to, but as I always say, I keep an open mind. In fact, it might be a nice front. So again, you see where I cut. Can you see all these hard cuts that I've made there? So these branches have all been cut over the years. So over the 35, 36 years that I've been here, I've been working on these trees all the time, but it's not a job that you can rush. So what I do with these trees, again with the Scots pines, I tip them, not just the needles, I tip the branches so that it buds further back. That's how I get the dense foliage formation. Although I said that was potentially the front. Now the more I look at it, I think this could also be the front. So I usually have to determine quite early on which is a nicer front or not. This has posed a real dilemma for me because this tree is nice from both sides, this side or the other side. So I really don't know what to do. Anyway, I'll show you. I'll work with this as the front first. If I don't like it, I can always change it. So what I'm doing here is I'm cutting it back like so. They're still green, and that will grow. I can even cut it there because there's still green there. So that's how I develop the pads. Now supposing this pad is too high, but I've got that one there, I can take this out. See, so I get that flat effect. Now that branch, okay, it's a bit weak, but if I were to just take the tips out, that will encourage bud back. The very weak shoots I will get rid of. They won't do anything. So we try to tidy each branch as we go along. Now this branch is not doing anything, so I will take this one off. This branch is very low. I don't think I need this. I don't think it'll do much even as a sacrificial. These are popping up a bit. Anything popping up I will take out. I'm trying to get a flat pad simply by pruning. A lot of weak shoots. Remember, if you have too many weak shoots and if they don't get the light, they will eventually die. So the trouble is, all these trees, they require so much attention during the year. So when you think that I've already worked 36 years on this tree, how much labor has been devoted to this tree. So I'm still trying to create flat pads there. Now that one is too low, so if I just bring the saw, I will cut that off. I know that I always say that having these low branches are sacrificials, but there comes a time when I can't wait forever. Also, this is growing on the inside. Should I use this at the front? This can come off. Don't ask me how I'm doing it. I'm doing it from, I think, instinct more than anything else. Now that branch is going that way, so I can make a pad going that way, but I can still keep the front open. Now if I were to use this as the front, do I need this? I don't need this. I'm not a great lover of gins, so I don't keep these. If someone wanted to make gins, they would keep these stubs. So I've opened out the front there. I will clean these up later on. There's no rush to clean it. So you can see the pad formation there. The pad formation here. So in fact, looking at the tree now from this side, look at it. It's got a lot of potential as the front from this side. If you view from here, it's a beautiful view of the trunk. So all I have to do now is keep taking the tips out, and it should encourage more bud back. If you have too much density and the light can't get to the inner twigs and branches, the inner branches die. Now this is growing upward too much, so let's encourage some branches to grow outwards. Don't let them grow inwards. You see the inwards ones, they all die back. So again, lack of light, the inside branches are not much good. During the year, I should go around the tree and keep removing a lot of the unwanted branches. You see, that's growing inwards. I don't want the inward growing one. Too much growing there. If I were to give you a pair of secateurs, I think you would feel a bit intimidated as to know where to start. I once had a guy who offered to be a volunteer, but he was terrified when I gave him the secateurs, and he just didn't know where to begin, even though I had shown him. So this comes with practice, as I always say. Practice makes perfect. The more you practice, the better you become. For the time being, what I'm doing is just opening the front out, keeping the conical shape. You see there is a conical shape there. And you can see the beautiful trunk there. This would make a beautiful specimen. Look at the trunk. And if you can get it tight, you can make a bonsai this size. Not impossible. Now there's a long branch there, take that out. I'm going to work on about 30 or 40 trees. It's only 12 o'clock lunchtime, but by 4 o'clock I should have worked on about 40 or 50 trees. But I'm not going to show you all of them. I've got to get on with the work because my volunteer Josh here, he's going to help me do some of the pruning. So look at it, look at all this pruning that I've done. So you're beginning to see how the shape of the tree is evolving. So although I thought that the other side was the front, I changed my mind and I'm keeping this as the front. And this makes a very credible front. The front is open when the branches are spreading out that way. And so I'm now just going to go around the tree and take out the weak shoots and tip all the shoots. Tip the shoots, take some of them out so that that would shorten it and make it grow denser and tighter. Not letting it keep extending more and more. So that's all I'm doing at the moment. See all these, simply go around like that and take the tips out. Just by doing that, you're going to get it to bud back. We don't have time to pinch the candles. I once had a guy come on the nursery and said, do you pinch all the candles of these trees? A tree like this would have about 2,000 candles or more. How can I spend time taking every single candle? Every bud has 3 or 4 candles. Nobody. I just go around and prune it with a secateurs. So, you know, you can learn the theory, but you've got to be practical as well. So it's a question of using common sense. A lot of people do not use common sense. They follow what 1 or 2 people have told them and they follow it slavishly. I don't know whether some of you noticed a comment on one of my YouTube videos. One of our fans gave me a very nice quote. He said, rules are like paper clips. They hold everything together, but they can be bent easily and they could be put out of shape. So that is what rule books are, like paper clips. So there you are. I don't know whether I've spent 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but I've opened the tree out. So I've given it a good basic shape, and this would become a very credible tree as a large bonsai or whatever. And mind you, in Japan, I used to visit a lot of gardens. There are contemporary styles of their so-called niwaki or garden trees where the shapes are more contemporary like this. They don't have to be the classic bonsai informal upright shape. So I will keep an eye on this tree. So if you look around, we've got scores and scores of trees. Let me just walk you to another one. There's another big one here. There's one here. And they all have these multiple trunks. Now this is leaning to this side, but look at this one here. This is a massive tree. Everything is frozen. But this would be the same age tree as the other one. So this will be thinned out and given it a shape. I wonder whether I should do this one. Okay, let's have a go at this one because this looks interesting. So what do I do when I look at it? Straight away I can see that this is leaning slightly. It's got a nice shape, it's got a nice dome shape, but it's too dense, much too dense. So let us begin by taking some of the bits out. Take it gradually. Now one of these branches, or the low branches, I think they were used for sacrificials. These two, I may continue to keep them as sacrificials, but they, I think, eventually might come off because it's getting a bit congested here. But I will just thin it a bit for now. Just in case, you never know, I might have use for it. Now that branch has died completely. So that's a dead branch, not enough light, a lot of stubs. No point keeping stubs because I'm not making gins with them. Opening the tree out so you can see the shape. The more I look, the more dead twigs I find. And after I've done this, I'm going to tip all these. I will go around the tree and tip them all so that I get bud back further in the tree. Lots of dead twigs in here. Countless dead twigs. Such a vigorous tree. This is also very vigorous. I don't think that's doing anything. You must be asking why don't I do this all the time, but as I say, we've got hundreds of trees. It's hard to get around to all the trees all the time. But while they're growing, they will be there. They're not going to run away. So I can always get to it and do what I want and rescue them. Let's look at this cluster here. You see this cluster has got so many branches here, and that's growing inside. So I take this one out. So I let it go outwards. I don't want it to go back inwards. See, like that, I don't want it to go back inwards. I prune that. You see all these inside branches, they will eventually die. They're all dead. So you might as well take it out now and let it grow outwards. And take the tip out so that it doesn't keep growing taller and taller. And the Bouverenensis produce a lot of cones, and they do seed themselves. And the plants do stay small. Look at it, the beautiful cones. So that is what I've done. I've cleaned it out. You can see the trunk. So this is going to be the potential front. So I've got the structure right. So it's always about the structure. Once you get the structure, the rest will fall into place. So you always think of the basics. The structure is like the basics. And the inside, again, lack of light, so much dead there. All the dead twigs, lack of light. So we might as well pin it while we get the chance. So I've taken a fair bit out, so you can see the shape of this tree coming along, and this is how we deal with them. So if ever you get the chance to come to the nursery, you can see all the material that we have, so for making large garden trees. And this, as we say, is the dwarf Scots pine. While I'm here, I'll just take you for a walk and show you some of the material we have. So these are all Bouverenensis pines, used mainly as garden trees, but some of them can be made into bonsai. This, for instance, can be made into a largish bonsai, so this has got potential. This is an ordinary, no, this is also Bouverenensis. This is not a Scots pine. And this is one of the experiments I did, where I leave the wire inside the trunk, and you see the wires popping out at the end here. And you look at the beautiful trunk that I've created there. So that could become a very nice Literati tree. This has got so much potential as Literati. And looking at it, I'm almost, excited to say the least. This is a Bouverensis, not an ordinary Scots pine. Ordinary Scots pine is more long in the needle. Now, to get it to bud back, all I need to do is to cut the tips off, and by the end of the growing season, I'm going to get lots of bud back. I don't need all of them. So let's reserve all the energy for what is left. And by doing this, I'm going to get bud back here because I need these branches. Literati style is a tall tree. I don't want it that tall though. Now this is quite interesting. You don't often get a situation like this, but I'm not going to cut it in case it becomes useful. Now, not all of it can be used. You see where these grow long? If you don't cut them, they just become longer and longer and longer. So not taking out the candle out at the right time makes it grow long. So we don't need them that long. So let's keep the potentially usable branches, head them back, head all of them back. So this can be wired back this way. I can assure you by the end of the growing season, this will all be budding back further. So this is going to be potentially a nice tree. I don't think I could possibly even use this, but I'll keep it in case I want to gin this part. It's possible to gin it, so let's keep it. So I have here a potentially very interesting tall Literati there. So I've done the basic pruning on that one. The trouble is there's so many interesting trees I'll never stop filming. But let's take you for a walk. This is what we were talking about. These are all the Bouverensis that we have here, and we've got more. While I'm passing by, this is one of our Siberian elms, and it's just about to flower. If you come close, look at the lovely flower buds here. They shatter and produce a lot of pollen. Now this tree, if I can show you, it's obviously become too big. And because elms are very easy to airlay, I'm going to airlay the tree here and get a bonsai here. So this is the plan for this one. I've got big trident maples here. I tried to do some air layering, it didn't work, but I will air layer it again. And these trees are constantly cut back. You can see where I've cut in the previous years. I cut it there and it's become bushy there. It was cut here and produced a new leader here. So this is how this tree is progressing. And this, in case it has escaped your attention, is a very large juniper. The variety is called Robusta Green. Look at the ivy growing around it. I dug it up about 4 years ago with a digger and put it in a pot. So this will be worked on one day. And I will just switch the camera off. I'll show you another area where we have a lot of Bouverensis. So here we have, this is another Bouverensis. Look at it. This is a triple trunk Bouverensis. How interesting is that? But they have had pruning. In case you think I have not been pruning, the centers have been taken out. I always take the centers out. So there's quite a bit of pruning done to this already. But we have to keep on top of it and keep the shape. So that's partly pruned. So let's take you to see more Bouverensis, both left and right. These are long-term jobs and long-term experiments. We do a lot of experiments on the nursery because these native species are not often used for bonsai. And because they're not used for bonsai, we keep doing experiments to see what works and what doesn't work. And I've noticed also that there are some Bouverensis that have a slightly different color. I don't know whether it is the effect of putting different types of fertilizer. That's another type of experiments we've been doing. If you look at this Bouverensis, it's very blue in color, whereas if you look at this one just next to it, it is more of a normal green. So I've got to experiment to see why some are green and some are blue. So again, you see there's another Bouverensis with multiple trunk. Another one here, another one here. I would have had more Bouverensis had I not been so careless in digging them out. These were dug out from the field. There's all Bouverensis. The snow and the wind has blown them all over. So these are smaller Bouverensis here. Now I will show you some really massive ones. As I say, these have been put in the pots for the last 20 years. And when I first came here in 1986, they were grown in the ground for the first 10 years. And in 1996 or 97, I dug them up with a digger. And I was a bit careless in digging some of them up. And because I was a bit careless, I think I must have lost about 20%, 1/5 of all the Bouverensis. So that was a tragic loss. Look at that beautiful San Jose juniper. This will be another YouTube project one of these days. So it's been partly trained in the ground. And if you take a bird's eye view of these Bouverensis, I did some work on it in the summer of last year. So you can see the lovely shapes that are emerging. Like this tree, this tree from here, I did do some work last summer. It's on one of my videos. So are these. So these have all been worked on last summer. These are all large Bouverensis trees. Look at the beautiful flaky bark on the trunk. Beautiful trunks. If only they were not so tall, they would be incredible bonsai. But they're nice as large garden trees. There's a juniper garden tree. And this is another stunner of a Bouverensis. Look at the trunk on that one. That is every bit 9 to 12 inches in diameter. And I'm not showing you all of them because we've got more in different places. That's a big Juniperus chinensis grey owl. And this I've had in the nursery for the last 35 years, 36 years. But I brought them with me from my previous house in Purley. And they were bought from a British nursery which specialized in growing these trees in the open ground. But nowadays, no one grows these trees anymore in the open ground. And look at this for a San Jose. I don't often show you this raw material. Look at that. I'm not going to make it into a small bonsai. These will be large garden trees. And then there's one here. This was a bonsai at one point, but I'm wanting to grow it bigger. So I'm going to tackle this. I'm going to thin it out and restore it to its rightful bonsai shape. And these trees like this, they've never had any work done except for cutting some of the central leaders out. See, bits like that were taken out, but apart from that, I haven't taken much else out. So have a good bird's eye view. So these are all the Bouverensis we have at Herons. So if ever you want a nice Bouverensis, we have them here. They're not exactly cheap. They start from a few hundred because most of these are at least 25 to 35 years growing in the nursery. While we are passing, this is not an ordinary Scots pine. This is the golden one, which is called Pinus sylvestris aurea. So it's a golden Scots pine. And that is the true color. It's not the lack of nitrogen or whatever. So that is the natural color. And I also do my wire trick on some of my Bouverensis. So this is a Bouverensis that I've kept the wire on, and I'm going to work on this at some stage. So there's lots of material to work on. These will make a nice medium-sized bonsai. So we will have a Bouverensis workshop at one point. Look at this one. Now this one I was a bit drastic. I took the main leading shoot out completely from this tree and just kept the side branches. So this is going to be made into a very nice tall bonsai. So we have so many projects in the pipeline. I don't know whether we'll ever get around to doing them all, but it just shows the wealth of material that we have here at Herons. So I hope you've enjoyed this little exercise, and we will now do work, but unfortunately I won't be filming it because we are both using our hands and there's no one to film. There you go.